I have a very strong memory of the first day. This is a story I've told before. The first day of my Talmud class, a wonderful professor who never had a woman student before. And he begins the class as he had for 30 years, 40 years, pounding on the table. "Gentlemen, let us begin." He looks up and he sees me and he says, "Gentleman and lady," and he said, "That doesn't sound right." And he says, "Gentleman and Laura." I mean, genuinely wanting to include me in the conversation. And he, as many people do, we began our study of Talmud with Tractate Brachot, which is a section of Talmud that deals with prayer and blessings. So this professor began by saying, God is present at all times, and we have a tradition of saying blessings as a way of acknowledging the presence of divinity. Jewish tradition tells us that you're supposed to say 100 blessings a day. 100 times during the day you stop and acknowledge that divinity is present. And then he said, there is no important moment in the lifetime of a Jew for which there is no blessing. And I remember thinking, wow, there's no important moment in the lifetime of a Jew for which there is no blessing. Divinity is present. It's just up to me to be present to the presence of divinity and acknowledge that God is here among us. And I have a very vivid memory of where I was sitting, looking out over 68th Street in New York City, and suddenly I realized that it wasn't true. There had been important moments in my lifetime for which there was no blessing. So I am now 23 years old maybe, sitting in this New York City classroom, and suddenly I became again a 13-year-old girl who had just gotten her period. I remember the moment. I came out of the bathroom, I went to my mother and I said, "Mom, I just got my period." And my mother said, when I got my period, my mother slapped me. And I said, "What? Why did Nana slap you?" She said, "I have absolutely no idea. Go and ask her." I got on my bicycle, rode to my grandmother's house, and I said, "Nana, why did you slap Mom when she got her period?" And my grandmother, an American-born woman, doesn't speak a word of Yiddish, says to me in this Yiddish accent that I'd never heard before and never heard a subsequent, "She was losing blood, she was a little pale, she needed color in her cheeks." End of story. I never thought about that moment again until I'm sitting in this rabbinical school classroom, and suddenly it occurred to me, what if my mother and I had prepared for that moment, not only by reading all the stuff about what was going on in my body. My mother was very good about that. I understood what was happening. But what if in preparation we had talked about the spiritual power of that moment? And when I got my period, what if my mother and I had said a blessing? A blessing as simple as the Shechianu, thanking God for bringing us to this moment. Or a blessing as simple as, "Thank you, God, for making me a woman." How would that have affected my experience as a Jewish woman? So at that moment, sitting in the class, I realized that what my teacher said needed to be true, that there be no important moment in the lifetime of a Jew for which there is no blessing, and that Jewish women's stories and life experience are part of that, and that we need to create new rituals to acknowledge the truth of that statement, that there's no important moment in the lifetime of a Jew for which there is no blessing.